It is irrational to expect man to be rational. This statement that I read in Robbins' textbook of pathology as a first-year medical student stuck in my brain. Because we as a species pride ourselves on our logic and rationality. I was reminded of this statement as I recently read and heard what I call the chair experiment. A group of interviewers were given hard chairs to sit while they evaluated a group of candidates. Another group of interviewers were given soft chairs to sit while they interviewed the same group of candidates. Almost all of the interviewers sitting on the hard chair evaluated these candidates as hard and inflexible, whereas rigid and inflexible, whereas the group of interviewers sitting on the soft chairs evaluated the same group of candidates as being flexible and not rigid. The sensory input that goes from our five senses into the unconscious or the automatic brain shapes and forms the basis of our decision. This sensory input is going in and formulating the decisions seconds before the conscious brain even recognizes what is happening. This hard scientific fact is accepted in neuroscience because it has been validated by a number of experiments, both in the laboratory as well as in a sociology context. Therefore, our behaviors, our actions are influenced by sensory input. This is fact number one. Take it to another scenario. Here is this boy, young boy, 7, 8 years old. He is bullied repeatedly in the locker room or the common room of his school. There is a group, 2 or 3, bigger boys, stronger, taller, more muscular, who repeatedly tease him, kind of hold his throat, push him around in this locker room lunchtime. This locker room has metal lockers with those kind of little locks. It has yellow and blue notice boards. There are hooks to hang up your jackets and cardigans. And there are skateboards lying around for the students to use in their break time. As this young boy grew up to be an adult, the personality that he developed, the conscious personality, was one of somebody who would stand up for the underdog. He would speak out for people who were being bullied. This is something you and I can all consciously understand. One day, for work, this adult went to another town for a meeting. At lunchtime, he was walking around the park just outside. This park was nice and green, had a little gentle ups and downs, and there was a track for young children to cycle, etc. As he was walking along the walking track, alongside him, a young boy skateboarded and whizzed past him. Suddenly, something overcame this person. He ran ahead, stopped the boy, caught him by his collar, held his neck and began to shake him and yell at him at the top of the voice. Later, he recognized that what happened to him was something different. It was weird. It was like something else overtook him. It was a behavior that was not what he consciously understood. It was not a behavior that seemed consciously part of his personality. As he tried to explain it to himself and others, by saying maybe he was so fast, he might have injured me or injured the senior citizens walking. He could have hurt himself. What really was happening is understood by cutting-edge neuroscience. In the background of the scene in his childhood where he was being bullied and experiencing helplessness, fear, anger, in the background of that were the sensory stimuli of a locker, a jacket, and skateboards. Understanding Pavlovian conditioning. If a background sensory input is repeatedly there when an event is occurring, that sensory input gets incorporated with the whole components of that main event, where now the brain system cannot recognize it as being an unrelated thing. This skateboard, which had nothing to do with the actual event, was merely a bystander in the background. Because it was there repeatedly, gets incorporated and linked to the emotions of fear, anger, helplessness. And then, one day as an adult, as this person is walking by, completely calm surroundings, peaceful, and he sees the skateboard whiz past his peripheral vision. This skateboard immediately goes and links to this neuronal circuit, which had this fear, helplessness, anger, and immediately he reacts out of that with the anger and the attack, which is the other side of fear. This is how, in scenarios of phobias, fear, post-traumatic stress disorders that don't go away and linger even when situations are different, when the situation creating the trouble has been removed, is because some spectator, some bystander, a sensory input in the background has now continued as a trigger in the present surroundings around. This is fact number 2. The sensory inputs in the background of a main event in childhood will stay as a trigger even when that event is no longer present. This is good, interesting, and explains irrational behaviors, pathological patterns of behavior. But we are medical students here, medical practitioners here. Does this have anything to do with the actual disease development, or is this merely something that belongs in the textbooks of psychology? Let me take you to the path-breaking experiment of Robert Adler and Nicholas Cohen. What they did is they took a group of rats, injected them with cyclophosphamide that causes a drop in the white blood cell count, the white blood cells that form the basis of our immune system. As they gave these rats this cyclophosphamide, they recorded the drop in the white blood cell counts. Then what they did is each time they gave the injection, a few seconds before, they gave saccharine on the tongue of these rats. After repeating this with significant repetitions, they took away the injection from this scenario. These rats now were no longer given the injection, just saccharine was put on their tongue. And what was observed, as you may have rightly begun to guess, is that even with just the saccharine, these group of rats now showed a drop in their white blood cell count. Thus, what Pavlov described in his conditioning applies not only to behavior, but also our body systems. When a system is functioning, if there is a sensory stimuli in the background, taste, sound, visual, smell, that is unconnected to the actual event, but it is there in the background repeatedly, it now becomes part of this scenario in our automatic brain and hence becomes a trigger for that same event to occur, even if the actual correct trigger is not present. This is the fundamental basis of a lot of the diseases that we are facing today. Immune system diseases, allergies, asthma, autoimmune forms a large amount of the diseases we see. And here in this experiment, very correctly and beautifully, is it shown that this sensory stimuli in the background, not being connected to the main event, by itself, the saccharin cannot drop the white blood cell count. But when it is paired with a substance that does drop that white blood cell count repeatedly, it becomes part of the system. And now the system responds only to this innocent trigger by causing a drop in the white blood cell count, by showing an altered immune response, therefore showing disease. This is very interesting when you look at it as the development of disease. But we are homeopaths here. Now the question in our minds is, okay, but what does this have to do with us as homeopaths finding the SIMILIMUM? Ladies and gentlemen, it is this sensory stimuli, the object in the background, that is that SIMILIMUM that we find as the single constitutional remedy or SIMILIMUM to correct the patient's health at the level of the mind and body. This sensory stimuli in the background in childhood that has altered the behavioral and the physical body system is the SIMILIMUM we are looking for. What is the proof for that? The first, when you go back to the scenes of childhood that are stored in this automatic brain, this substance, this object is right next to the object the person or the patient fears today in his conscious life. The second, the food that the patient is averse to, that he hates to eat, shares characteristics, one or more, with this sensory substance or trigger in the background. The third proof, the symptoms of the chief complaint, the individualizing symptoms of the patient's complaints that show the inner working, what is going wrong in that inner machinery that is showing the disease at this individual level, as Hahnemann showed us. These individualizing symptoms of the five senses perfectly match the substance's source characteristic. That is the final proof. The chief complained particular symptoms confluence completely with the source characteristic of this substance that we find in the background of the person's life in his childhood, that has got incorporated and has affected his behavioral patterns and affected the body functioning systems. How then to use fears, dreams, chief complaints to get to this substance? How to bring together the confluence of cutting-edge neuroscience with cutting-edge homeopathy, and yet validated by the age-old principles of homeopathy of Boger, Boninghosen, Hahnemann, and Kent. Let's bring that together at the Step Up to the SIMILIMUM webinar of 4 perfectly curated sessions to showcase the method and empower you to apply it. These 4 cases cover different age groups, different diseases, and different remedies, as well as showing the nuances of this method. So it is on the 1st, 8th, and all the first 4 Saturdays of July at 8 p.m. India time. We have German translation, Spanish and Italian translation. The recordings will be available for at least 6 months in case you miss a session. I encourage you, we have a few seats left, to quickly step up your game and register now for the Step Up to the SIMILIMUM webinar of 4 sessions. That starts on the 1st of July, Saturday, 8 p.m. For some of the advanced students, I call them advanced because you've been part of me as this method has evolved and been fine-tuned and sharpened. 2 of these cases will show, one of these is a child 0 to 5, and one of these will be a child between 5 to 12. And you know that the methodology there has a slight variation because of the way the brain circuits are developing. So join us in the Step Up to the SIMILIMUM 4-session webinar, perfectly curated, to bring this methodology of finding that substance in the background that's completely controlling our lives and that of our patients, to allow us and our patients to reach that higher purpose of existence. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Step Up to the SIMILIMUM webinar series.